this content is for kids.
It's not for kids.
Isn't that what I said?
No, it's not for kids. If you are 13 years or younger, this is not for you. Do I have to kill somebody in order to actually make that point across?
No, man, you don't have to kill
Wait
no one.
a second.
Oh, no.
When we return to our planet, the High Court may well sentence you to torture.
He likes movies, we like movies. Septum Sin versus the world. 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 I'd buy that for $1.
Greetings! You're watching Septum Sen versus the World. I'm Septum Sen. This is Kotobuki J.
Hey?
We're here to show you what they got.
Yes.
So, we have some interesting stuff. Of course, Kotobuki J has some deaths he'd like to highlight, which we will play for you at the end. So, of course, if you are here just for the death news, you can forward to the end. But otherwise, we're going to give you some lovely DVD footage right now.
Up early in the morning, get on my routine, taking care of business so I can get on my way. I got the kids on my mind, and it's just what I find. It seems like my day, we got the itch to find them all. We'll make a move. So come along, collect the way from retro to today. I'm making that work so I can trade. I'm checking Craigslist every day. eBay ain't what it used to be, and Goodwill's got them on display. Some say I got a problem, but I don't see it that way. Some say I got a problem. Yeah, I'm missing Mega Man 3. We got the itch to find them all. We're making moves, so come along, collect the way from retro to today. The itch to find them all. We're making moves, so come along, collect the way from retro to today.
Alright, there's the DVD footage. Of course, no Gundam this week.
Of course.
But we do have a lot of fun stuff this week. Why don't you go ahead and start us off?
Alright, so the first that we have is kind of a strange one that I'm kind of curious about, and that is a film called Last Christmas. And it came out last Christmas, but now it's getting a physical release. It's a Paul Feig movie, co-written by Emma Thompson. And so that's kind of cool. And of course, she's in the movie as well, along with such individuals as Emilia Clarke, Michelle Yeoh, Patti LuPone, Henry Golding. That's actually a pretty interesting cast. I didn't know all of them were in that. And I think, who is the main one? I guess Emilia Clarke's the main one. And it looks like it's supposed to be sort of a holiday-themed romantic comedy sort of thing. But being a Paul Feig movie, probably a little more bite to it than, say, Love Actually or something like that. Looks fun. I'll give it a go.
Might be fun. Well, something that's identical comedy-wise is the great screwball comedy, also women-centric comedy, Dr. Sleep.
Man, I must have heard some misinformation about that one.
By that great comedic writer, Stephen King.
Actually, he does do some comedy.
He does do some. This, of course, is the sequel to The Shining. I've heard it was rather good, and they kind of tie in elements of the Stanley Kubrick Shining, along with, I think, some elements from the books, don't they?
My understanding, there is a book, Dr. Sleep,
Yes,
that was King's actual
I've
sequel.
read that, yes.
I have not yet. I did read The Shining ages ago, and I loved it. But I was never a fan of Kubrick's Shining. Watch our Inside Movies Glory discussion for very in-depth. We had Dane with us at the time, who was a big Kubrick fan, and this one supposedly draws elements from both the movie and the book. So it tries to have it both ways. It tries to be an adaptation of the book and also a sequel to the film. And I've heard mixed things about how well it did that, but
draws things from the book, unlike Kubrick's The Shining.
Exactly, yes.
Well, you know, it's kind of weird. I mean, there's been all over the place. You had Kubrick's version, which kind of went all over the place away from the book. And then there was the Stephen King TV movie, which pulled too much from the book, many people felt. And I don't know. I actually am one of the few people who really liked the movie. But a Stephen King fan understands that the beginning of any Stephen King novel is a slow burn. You get to know the characters, and then when the crap happens, you actually care enough about the characters that you are like, this is not good.
Yeah, exactly. So my next one is one that I, for the life of me, cannot remember exactly what the people were most furious about. I think it was maybe Taylor Russell might have been the star of the film, but it's a sports drama called Waves that a lot of people put on their year-end best of lists, and a lot of people put it forward as a big-time snub for the year. Again, for the life of me, I can't remember the particulars, but I do know that it didn't get any Oscar love. But it is supposedly an excellent film. It's coming out this week. I will be getting it from the library eventually to give it a look and see, what they think. Well, it may be one of those many ones that I never get around to actually getting, but it's on the radar as a potential get. And if nothing else, I wanted to give it a shout out because so many people said that it was such a great, yeah.
Well, next up is the movie, the second part to season 1 of The Time I Got Reincarnated as a Slime. Looks fun. That's all I really need to say.
Right.
I have nothing else.
That's all I'd say about that.
Yep.
My next one's actually a pretty big, I'm going to do a whole bunch of stuff lumped in together. Unfortunately, I cannot give truly in-depth on most of these because I've actually only seen one of them, sadly. But this week sees the release, and I'm not sure what the trigger for this particular release is, but there's a lot of Spike Lee joints coming out this week. His famed and I believe award-winning film Jungle Fever, Summer of Sam, Clockers, Crooklyn, and Mo Better Blues all coming out this week. I've seen Clockers, and I was not blown away by it. It's not bad. It's a harsh cop drama. John Turturro, Harvey Keitel. Oh man, I'm drawing a blank on the rest of the cast. But anyway, I've heard mixed things about a lot of these films, but Jungle Fever, like I said, is generally held in high regard, and I believe Summer of Sam was quite well received too. Controversial because of the subject matter, but you know, and because Spike Lee, because he loves to court controversy. But but all of these are getting Blu-ray releases. I don't know, is it the first release for some of them, if not all of them?
I have no clue.
Well, they're all getting new Blu-ray releases. So if you're a Spike Lee fan and you've been kind of slow adding to your collection, or if you're just curious what the dude's all about, this is a pretty good shot to do some serious catching up.
Alright.
Yep.
Well, I had said I have a couple of these.
Right.
The one I do have, but I cannot remember where my copy is. It's one of those that's on a multi-pack, which is it's a re-release on Blu-ray for My Bloody Valentine, the 1981, not the remake, the 3D remake. It's a it's probably on one of those like mini multi-packs down there.
Right.
But it's a fairly decent horror film, essentially about this mine and the guy who basically goes around and killing people in it. It's a fun film. I really enjoy it. I am not sure whether it feels like it needs to be on Blu-ray, but whatever.
So, the last live-action one, actually, that I'm going to present this week is another one that I really need to see. I know I'm bad movie geek, especially bad child of the 80s/early 90s. But I never have seen John Singleton's Boyz N the Hood, but I need to. But it's getting the 4K treatment this week, which, from what I understand, I believe that one supposedly had a pretty badass soundtrack. So if nothing else, the improved audio quality should make for a good viewing experience there. But that definitely is considered one of the classic kind of what am I trying to say? I don't know. One of those gritty urban dramas from the early 90s, you know. There were a number of them. And
I'm surprised that's not gotten a Criterion release.
It probably will eventually. You know, they need to step up their release of Spike Lee for that matter. I mean, I'm surprised they haven't done Jungle Fever.
They have one.
What?
They have one of his, I think.
No, they have a couple. They've got one coming out in a couple weeks, if I remember correctly. And there might be some more on the way.
Well, I mean, so that's a good thing.
Yep.
I was gonna say, I know they don't have many.
Yeah.
The only one I have is one of them, which is, I think, Do the Right Thing, which was out. And that wasn't that long ago that got a release.
No, it got re-released.
Yeah.
That was one they had out.
No, I was talking about on Criterion.
Yeah, they had it and they re-released it.
So how many did they have that they haven't released? Did they have all of them on the first release?
Do it.
You said there were some that were earlier released. Other than that, what other ones were earlier released?
Well, the only other one that I know for sure is coming out in a couple weeks is Bamboozled, but there may not be any others already. Yeah, which is kind of weird.
Oh, well, speaking of Criterion, Arrow, which, in my opinion, puts out almost as good a quality releases, maybe not the films themselves, depends on your taste.
Right.
But a horror classic, Brain Damage, is releasing. I was thinking I might have had it, but I do not have it, which makes this worth searching out because it is a really, and I don't think you could watch this one.
Probably not.
But it is a really big horror classic, and having the Arrow version might be worth its while. I I don't want to. I hate waiting on Arrow stuff because Arrow stuff tends to go out of print and then go up in price. And I don't know. I do like the movie, and the original is kind of out of print, so it's really hard. But I do want to get it.
Right. Now, an unfortunate theme for this week is mostly stuff I'm not very familiar with, unfortunately. But one that's coming out this week that I'm very, very interested in, and I do believe it's a Funimation release, if I remember correctly. Yes, it is a Funimation release. This week we'll see the release of season 1 of a series called Isekai Quartet. Now, if you read anything on A&N for the last 2 years, you'll know that some of them are way over the Isekai boom. And many fans are as well. The Isekai basically travel to another world. A lot of video game series fall into this genre, but also a lot. Technically, some people say like Harry Potter kind of fits into this sort of idea. It's a huge thing right now. Now, one thing that they did is they took. This is A&N's description. It happens in 4 different worlds. A mysterious button appears, and whether accidentally or intentionally, someone pushes it. The core characters from each world suddenly find themselves in a modern Japanese schoolyard before they are gathered together into a classroom where they must figure out what's going on and whether these colorful characters from other worlds are friend or foe. Isekai Quartet is an anime original crossover between the light novel-based series Overlord, Re:Zero, Konosuba, and Saga of Tanya the Evil. Now, all of those are shows that are on my radar. They're all ones I'm interested in, especially Overlord and Saga of Tanya the Evil. But the idea of them getting mixed up together, even if I don't know the shows, it could still be a fun concept.
I'm surprised Re:Zero is not on your list
Of,
like must-gets.
well, it's on my list of to get. But yeah, all of these I think are Funimation releases, right?
I think so.
So I might get them next time I get a really good deal on them or whatever. But yeah, I from the moment I heard about that show, I'm like, that sounds fun. Because I like the idea of established characters being dunked into a new world or new thing. It's kind of, I finally got back into my viewing of Flash last night, and it's just after the whole Flashpoint part of the series, so I get a little taste of that in that show. It's a fun concept, and so this looks a little more lighthearted than what that was.
I guess I can... Actually, speaking of lighthearted, this one actually is lighthearted. I'm talking about a show called The Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt. They did the complete series. I want to say it's a 2-season series. It's one of the streaming series. It was either Hulu or Netflix. I can't remember which. It's about this girl who was basically locked away by this cult, and she was finally freed. And I want to say she is culturally back in either the 80s or 90s when she last left culture, so she was kind of adapting from there. So it's actually quite a charming show. I really enjoyed it. I haven't watched it for a while, but it was a really fun show. It's one I think should eventually be in my collection.
Sounds fun.
Yeah.
Yep. So, next up, another anime that honestly, it's on my radar more than anything because I love the title. And that is a series that's, I believe, getting a Section 23 release this week called The Magnificent Kotobuki. Which, that could be, screaming. But it's basically about a group of bodyguards for hire. It has decent ratings on A&N. Again, I know relatively little about it. It just looks fun. So, and given that it's Section 23, I'll probably be able to pick it up dirt cheap eventually when Sentai does one of their crazy sales. So,
one that I don't plan on getting, but one I own because I like Bubblegum Crisis.
Oh yeah, I do have
And this
that one.
series, yeah, I figured you did. And this series was fairly cheap back in the day. ADV released it. They had a spin-off called AD Police Files. That's not what this is. This is the spin-off of the spin-off, AD Police to Protect and to Serve. Now, I happen to have the old ADV copy of this. This is sort of an alternate version of it. And there were the actual cops that are trying to fight the boomers, which are these robots that kind of humanoid robots that went out of control. But seems like the only ones competent enough to take them out are the girls that are in Bubblegum Crisis. But you actually get to see them in action here. It's not as gritty. It's kind of got almost a yaoi edge to it. But it's a interesting buddy cop type series.
Yeah.
Not a bad series. Not a great series. Okay.
If you're one of those people who like buddy cop shows and the kind of 80s vibe sort of sci-fi stuff, it's pretty fun.
And if you really want to get everything Bubblegum Crisis related.
Right. I've been slacking on that.
It doesn't have as good a soundtrack, though.
Oh,
That's
no.
one thing.
Tokyo 2040 had a great soundtrack.
Shoot, all of them.
Well,
for
the
most
first
part.
one, yeah, that's true.
They were all like big on their music.
So I'm a little bit unclear about this next release, but I believe it's a 3-movie set called Donten Laughing Under the Clouds. There is a show, and then there are movies based on the show. And since I'm not very familiar with them, I couldn't really tell you too much about it. It looks fun. I like the title. It caught my attention, and it is on my to get one of these days list.
Well, one that I definitely want to get is the new Fully Cooley show. It didn't get great reviews. And I'm still... Now, they did, but they are releasing a single of the new on DVD only. Or you can get the Blu-ray, which has the old and the new. Like, I've got this. Now, Fully Cooley is a classic. You didn't care as much for it. But,
overrated.
Essentially, it is very artistic, very strange.
Yes.
And very messed up in many ways. Essentially, you've got this guy who is kind of bored with small town life, and this woman comes into his life with a big guitar, hits him on the head, has a robot come out from his head, and the robot then swallows the boy, and they defeat pirates, and the robot craps him out, and they repeat.
And the town has a giant building in the shape of an iron.
Yep.
Yeah.
Now the sequel supposedly continues on with this, and like I say, I've heard mixed things, but mostly I've heard bad. Many people weren't quite. It's sort of like how, matter of fact, it came out around the same time that the new Kino came out, and that one also kind of had the it's all right.
Yeah.
There are a couple of people who say it's really good, but those are many people who haven't seen the original. They say this is good. This is good enough. I'm like, no, you haven't seen the original.
No, this is good enough. So, my last one is one that is actually getting a classics release from Funimation this week. It's not one that I have seen yet, but I have been reading on the manga. I actually read 4 volumes of the manga over the weekend, and I'm gotten pretty far into it. And based on the manga, I think it could very well be, it certainly is a highly acclaimed series, and that is the series Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maid. Couple other big things that we've seen a lot of lately, Monster Girls and Maids. Well, Maids have been an eternal thing in anime. But actually a running joke in the series is that Toru is really not a very good maid at all. She puts all her heart and soul into being a maid, but she is not a good maid. She's good at everything else except being a maid. Which is kind of fun. But it's a series about Miss Kobayashi, who is a, I think, 20-something office worker who drinks her life away and works hard at her job, and she has a work friend, but otherwise nothing much. And one night on a drunken bender, she meets a dragon with a sword in its back, and she pulls the sword out and saves the dragon's life and says, "You can come crash with me." And then thus begins their life together, with Toru hero-worshipping Miss Kobayashi and doing everything she can to mate with her. And meanwhile, you have all these other dragons showing up, and the sorcerers, and all kinds of craziness. And and it's a really fun mix. It gets into seriously ecchi territory in sometimes.
Oh, looks it.
But I'm sure the anime probably more so. But it's a fun series, and I want to see it. And I'm sure it deserves being called a classic, I guess.
See, it's just too expensive.
Yeah.
I don't know. I have and classics don't do any favors for the cost.
Right.
I don't know. It's one that I know a lot of people who love the harem type animes and ecchi. They love the series, but I really am more picky when it comes to harems. It has to have, because it can't just be a harem anymore. It's got to be a really good. It's got to have a good story these days,
Right.
or else I would have loved Onii, and I hate Onii. Or I'd love Cat Planet Cuties.
I like that one.
See, I didn't like it. So, and you see, that's the thing, is it's all about, it's got to be more than just a lot of cute girls.
This one gets a lot into feelings, and actually I want to make a point real quick and double check our video from way back when on anime that really needed an American release. I believe this was one I highlighted. The creators of this series also created a series that was adapted into really, really, really short episodes. It's called I Can't Understand What My Husband Is Saying. And I love that show, and it needs an American release. So maybe if you people check out this one, that one's a little more serious, a little less ecchi, but it has a lot of...
That was a heck of a lot less ecchi.
But it's a lot of the same visual feel. It's a very... there's some similarities between that character and Miss Kobayashi, but not... whatever. But yeah, so is that all of the...
That's everything. So let's,
okay.
That's the end of the... Sorry, I'll get to you. Don't worry.
I know. Yeah.
This is the end of the portion where we discuss the DVDs. So, for those of you who are interested, we have a few deaths and losses that we want to report for you.
Right. Well, if you've been following this channel, we tried to make this a feature before. I was hoping to just kind of casually slip it into one, but he wanted to separate it out so that...
I'm not here to ambush our audience here.
Well, there were, I think, 3 very, very important ones over the last couple weeks that deserve a mention. And, of course, if any of you have been following the news at all the last 2 days, you're well aware of one of them, Kobe Bryant's very sudden passing in a helicopter crash. Dude was 41 and was with his 13-year-old daughter, and there were 7 other people on board. That's very unfortunate. And amazingly enough, he actually deserves mention on this channel because he was an Oscar-winning... He made history as the first athlete to win an Oscar, which actually is kind of a pretty cool little... even though I didn't think Dear Basketball was the best animated short that year, he made history also as the first African-American in that category to win. So, history-making Oscar winner. So that was... And not to mention a titan of sport. If you're into sports, yeah. The other 2, very much entertainment. They were part of groups. They may not have been household names to those who didn't know the groups, but people know the groups. 3 or 4 weeks ago, we lost Neil Peart, the drummer for Rush. And Rush is huge. They are, if you've ever watched I Love You Man, you definitely know Rush.
Your brother's going to be broken up.
Oh, Clayton was the one that told me.
Huh?
He let me know. I was like... So I mean, Rush, of course, is a trio. I think they were all college professors. They're like very whip-smart individuals, phenomenal musicians, been together for years and years and years. One of the few rock bands that hasn't had major lineup changes. Unfortunately, the trio is now a duo because Pert is no longer with us. And again, big part of the fabric of movies and books. Rush actually had a major role to play in Ernest Cline's Ready Player One. I still don't know why Steven Spielberg chose to downplay that in the movie, but and he also chose to downplay another part of the book in the movie that relates to the other one. Terry Jones, founding member of Monty Python, was another really big one.
That was the one who had the Alzheimer's?
And not Alzheimer's, but a different
Dementia?
It was a form of dementia, but it was apparently very rare. I can't remember what it's called. But Jones, we knew, was leaving us because he has had this dementia for years. But he was still around. Since Graham Chapman passed, in the late 80s? All the Pythons have still hung in there. But now we are down to... Jones, of course, was the director of Monty Python's Life of Brian. He was the co-director of Meaning of Life and Monty Python and the Holy Grail. He pretty much co-wrote most of the stuff they ever did. If you ever saw a middle-aged housewife in any Monty Python production, it was probably him. He also was Sir Bedivere in Holy Grail. I think he wrote Labyrinth, if I'm remembering correctly. And he was an acclaimed historian. He did he did an Emmy-winning stint as an historian for PBS. So, documentaries on PBS. So, like I said, those two may not have really been household names, but everyone knows Rush and Monty Python. So, for geeks like us, keenly felt losses. And I'm sure, especially Ernest Cline, since he made both of them integral to Ready Player One. But yeah, so like I said, I wanted to make sure the three of them got a shout out. And hopefully that wasn't too morbid addition to the segment for you. And check out our other videos this week that are going to be lots of fun.
Oh yeah, lots of videos.
Yes.
All 7 days this week.
Mm-hmm.
So,
all right.
We will see you on the next one.